On the streets of Guadalajara, Mexico, in the summer of 2013, everyone knew who Diego Ramírez was. His name was like a curse. No one dared to speak it aloud. The feared leader of the Los Hermanos cartel commanded such authority at 43 that even the police chief signed reports with trembling hands, stating he had found insufficient evidence against Diego. Diego was a tall, broad-shouldered man whose black hair was already streaked with a few gray strands. He wore expensive suits, under which the outline of a weapon was always visible. But it was his eyes that truly chilled people. A cold, gray gaze that conveyed he had seen too much death and wouldn't hesitate to cause more. The Los Hermanos cartel controlled half of Guadalajara. Drugs, weapons trafficking, protection money. Every major business operated with Diego's permission. Those who crossed him simply disappeared. Those loyal to him lived wealthy lives. This was the law in Diego's empire. When Diego's black Escalade appeared on the streets, pedestrians instinctively looked away. Shopkeepers pulled down their shutters. Children were dragged into houses. Mothers began to pray. Everyone knew when Diego Ramírez appeared somewhere, it meant trouble for someone. El jefe viene, people whispered to each other. The boss is coming. Police officers who otherwise proudly patrolled the city streets suddenly had urgent business elsewhere when Diego's car appeared. Local politicians, who otherwise spoke loudly about corruption, fell silent when Diego's name came up. Once, the city's mayor publicly criticized the cartels. The next morning, his car stood burned out in his driveway with a note on the windshield. "Next time, you'll be in it." The mayor hasn't spoken about cartels since. Los Hermanos controlled the construction industry, shipping, clubs, and most of the bars. Diego's men were everywhere. At the market, bus stops, around the university. No one could ignore Diego's presence in the city. In one of the city's poorest neighborhoods, Colonia Esperanza, there was a small restaurant called Casa Esperanza. The area was what wealthier Guadalajarans called a no-go zone. Narrow, dusty streets, houses with rusty tin roofs, where people lived day to day. Here worked Sofia Morales, a 22-year-old girl who studied medicine at the Universidad de Guadalajara during the day and worked as a waitress in the evenings to earn her tuition. Sofia was small, barely 155 centimeters tall, in worn clothes bought from second-hand shops. Her long black hair was often tied in a tired bun, and dark circles under her eyes betrayed sleepless nights spent studying. People generally looked down on Sofia. Customers often spoke harshly to her because they knew she was a poor girl who couldn't afford to talk back. Local men made obscene comments about her, while women looked at her as if she were invisible. "Hey, you little nobody!" regularly shouted Roberto Vega, one of the regular customers, a fat, sweaty man who ran the local auto repair shop. "Move faster! I don't have all day! What is this, a hotel?" Sofia always nodded patiently. "Right away, Señor Roberto. And don't forget to smile. Your job is to entertain us." The local women treated her even worse. Carmen Gutierrez, a middle-aged woman from one of the neighborhood's better families, regularly humiliated Sofia. "Look at her," she pointed to her friends. "She probably thinks the university will make something of her. How much do you bet she'll be pregnant before she graduates?" The women laughed loudly, and Sofia pretended not to hear. She needed every peso she earned here. University tuition, books, public transportation. She counted every cent. Sofia's story was typical for Colonia Esperanza. Her father, Miguel Morales, left the family when she was 10. He simply didn't come home from work one day, and they never heard from him again. Her mother, Carmen Morales, worked as a cleaning lady for wealthy families in Zapopan, the city's upscale district. From childhood, Sofia knew that if she wanted to break out of poverty, she had to take the first step herself. She was an excellent student in school and received a scholarship to university. But the scholarship only covered half the tuition. She had to scrape together the rest. Working at Casa Esperanza wasn't dignified work. Customers often arrived drunk, especially on weekends. Sofia learned how to avoid groping hands, how to smile when crying inside, and how to remain polite when people spoke to her like an animal. "Sofia!" shouted Carlos Mendez one evening, a young man who was the neighborhood's drug dealer. "Come here and sit with us. I'll show you what real fun means." "Thank you, Senor Carlos, but I have to work," Sofia replied firmly. "Come on. What do you do when you finish here? You must be terribly lonely." Sofia didn't respond, just continued her work. Carlos and his friends laughed loudly. "Maybe she thinks she's too good for us," said Carlos. "Maybe she thinks the university will make her something special." Colonia Esperanza was a place where people learned to keep their eyes down. Los Hermanos cartel members regularly patrolled the neighborhood in black SUVs with automatic weapons. Everyone knew who was in charge here. Many of the neighborhood's young people joined the cartel. Easy money, expensive cars, respect, at least the fear that looked like it. Sofia watched as former classmates disappeared from the streets one by one, only to return months later with gold teeth, expensive watches, and a look that said they were no longer the same people. "Look at Raul," one customer pointed out one evening to the boy who arrived in an expensive car outside the restaurant. "6 months ago, he lived like a beggar. Look at him now." Raul Garcia, Sofia's former classmate, had indeed changed. Expensive clothes, gold chains, and 2 bodyguards accompanied him everywhere. But Sofia saw his eyes. The same fear was in them as in everyone else's, only now he was the one they feared. One evening on August 15, 2013, Diego accidentally stopped by Casa Esperanza when his car broke down nearby. His driver, Miguel Santos, suggested they wait in the car until mechanics arrived, but Diego was curious. He hadn't been in the city's poorer neighborhoods for months and was beginning to wonder how people lived there. When Diego entered Casa Esperanza, the restaurant fell silent at once. The customers, who had been talking loudly just moments before, stared down at their plates with lowered heads. Roberto Vega, who was usually the loudest, suddenly swallowed his words. Carmen Gutierrez and her friends pretended not to exist. Maria Santos, the owner and Miguel's distant relative, wiped the counter with trembling hands. She knew who this man was and prayed nothing bad would happen in her restaurant. Sofia was the only one who didn't recognize Diego. She was just coming out of the kitchen with a tray of food when she saw the new customer. She simply approached him with the same natural smile she greeted every customer with. "Good evening, senor. What can I bring you?" she asked politely. Diego was surprised. For years, no one had spoken to him as if he were a normal person. Everyone either feared him, flattered him, or tried to get something from him. This girl, however, was simply polite, with no hidden agenda. "Quesadilla and a beer," he said quietly. Sofia nodded and left. Diego watched how she moved around the restaurant and noticed the contemptuous glances other customers cast at her. He heard Roberto call out to her, "Hey, Sofia, I need a beer too, and don't take all evening. What are you doing, daydreaming?" The girl nodded patiently and hurried away. Diego saw how Carlos Mendez ran his hand along Sofia's arm as she passed by, and how the girl gently but firmly pulled away. When Sofia brought Diego's order, it turned out to be surprisingly delicious. The quesadilla was freshly made, and the beer was appropriately cold. Diego watched as Sofia served other customers and saw that she was equally polite and patient with everyone, despite being treated rudely. When paying, Diego put a 500 peso bill on the table. The bill was 85 pesos. Sofia returned most of the money to him, keeping only an appropriate tip. "Señor, this is too much. You already paid for the food, and this is an appropriate tip," she said, returning the excess. Diego raised his eyebrows. This was the first time in years someone had refused his money. "Keep it all." "Thank you very much, señor, but I only accept what I deserve," Sofia replied firmly. Diego wondered why she was doing this. Most people in the neighborhood would greedily grab the money. This girl, however, was doing something different. She wasn't afraid of him, but she didn't want to take advantage either. She was simply honest. A week later, Diego appeared at the restaurant again. This time he came intentionally. He was curious about this girl who behaved so naturally with him. When he entered, the restaurant fell silent again. Now everyone knew who he was. Roberto Vega paid his bill so quickly he nearly knocked over his table. Carmen Gutierrez and her friends whispered prayers at the corner table. Sofia, however, served him just as naturally as the first time. She didn't flatter him, wasn't overly afraid. She simply did her job. Diego noticed that the other customers behaved even worse toward Sofia than a week earlier. Perhaps because they were tense due to his presence. Perhaps because they wanted to show they controlled at least something. "Sofia," shouted Carlos Mendez. "Where's that beer? What are you doing, counting stars?" The girl patiently hurried to the kitchen. Diego saw an older man, Pedro Ruiz, grab Sofia's wrist as she passed by. "Little beauty, why so sad? Come with me tonight, and I'll show you how to have a good time." Sofia gently but firmly freed her hand. "Thank you, Señor Pedro, but I have to work." "Come on! What do you do at home? Study? What could a girl like you possibly learn?" Diego felt something boiling inside him, but he didn't speak yet. He watched, studied the situation. 2 weeks later, on Friday, August 30th, Diego visited Casa Esperanza for the third time. The restaurant was crowded. Weekends always brought more people. The air was smoky, filled with loud laughter and conversation. Diego sat at his usual table and watched the crowd. Sofia ran back and forth, trying to satisfy every customer's needs. The girl was tired. It showed in her movements, but she didn't complain. Then 3 men entered whose appearance changed the restaurant's atmosphere. They wore expensive suits, gold chains around their necks, and behaved as if they owned the entire world. Members of the Los Cuervos cartel, Diego's biggest rivals. The leader was Luis Herrera, a man around 30 who had recently been trying to extend Los Cuervos' influence into Diego's territory. Beside him stood 2 bodyguards, Javier Moreno and Ricardo Vega. The 3 men spoke loudly, cursed, and behaved demandingly. The restaurant's other customers tried to remain unnoticed. No one dared to watch them. Sofia dutifully approached them to take their order. "Good evening. What can I bring you?" she asked politely, though a slight nervousness was audible in her voice. Luis Herrera slowly looked her up and down, almost scanning her with his gaze. A disgusting smile crossed his face. "What can you bring us, pequeña? Yourself, perhaps?" Javier and Ricardo laughed loudly. The restaurant's other customers watched tensely, but no one dared to speak. This was the rule. You don't interfere in what's not your business. Sofia blushed, but maintained her dignity. "Please choose from the menu." Luis stood up and stepped closer to her. He was a tall man, much larger than Sofia, and he tried to intimidate her with his proximity. "Listen, you little whore. What do you do at night when you leave here? You're probably a prostitute, like all the girls in this shit neighborhood." Everyone in the restaurant heard, but they pretended not to. Roberto Vega stared deep into his plate. Carmen Gutierrez and her friends prayed. Carlos Mendez, who was usually loud, now fell silent. "Please sit down and I'll take your order," Sofia tried again, but her voice was already trembling. Luis, however, stepped closer and suddenly grabbed Sofia's wrist. "Don't you understand me, little girl? I didn't come here to talk about food with you. Come with me to the back room, and I'll teach you what a real man is for." Sofia tried to free her hand, but Luis squeezed harder. "Let me go," she said, fear now audible in her voice. "Either you come with me peacefully," Luis continued, now loud enough for everyone to hear, "or I'll show everyone here what a little whore you are. What's it going to be? Have you decided?" Javier and Ricardo surrounded Sofia, blocking her path. The girl looked around for help, but every gaze avoided hers. At that moment, Diego slowly stood up from his table. The movement was like lightning cutting through a stormy sky. The restaurant's air froze. Every eye turned to him as he approached them calmly, but with terrifying authority. With each step, the tension grew. Diego wasn't hurrying. He moved slowly, deliberately, and his presence made the air almost electric. The customers instinctively sensed that something terrible was about to happen. Luis, who was holding Sofia's hand, looked at the approaching man. At first, he didn't recognize him, but something in the man's aura made him alert. "What the hell do you want?" he asked aggressively, but less confidently than a minute earlier. Diego didn't answer. He just stood there, 3 meters away from them, and looked at Luis in a way that made him instinctively release Sofia's hand. Something in the stranger's eyes was such that it disturbed even an experienced criminal. "I asked what the hell you want," Luis repeated, but his voice was no longer as confident. "Let the girl go," Diego said quietly, but in his voice was the cold promise of doom. The sentence was so simple, but the way he said it froze the restaurant's air. Javier and Ricardo also felt something was wrong. They too stood up and surrounded Diego. "And what if we don't?" asked Javier. "Who the hell are you?" Diego took a step closer. Now only 2 meters separated them. "The one who tells you to let her go." Sofia looked at Diego fearfully. "Señor, please don't get involved in this." But Diego didn't move. He just stood there and waited. His gaze bored into Luis's eyes, and at that moment, Luis felt this wasn't an ordinary man. Something about this man was more dangerous than any weapon. Luis suddenly became angry. No one could talk to him like this, especially not a stranger on his own territory. "You know what, friend? You're going to get a good lesson too." With that, he suddenly released Sofia's hand and tried to punch Diego with full force, but someone caught his fist in the air. Diego grabbed Luis's hand and squeezed his wrist with such force that he screamed in pain. The cartel leader's face changed. This wasn't an ordinary customer. This was a man who knew how to cause pain. "I said let the girl go," Diego repeated, his voice still deadly calm. Luis doubled over in pain. Okay, I'll let her go." Diego released his wrist, and Luis staggered back. But Javier and Ricardo wouldn't leave it at that. Javier, Luis's bodyguard, pulled out a pistol and pointed it at Diego. "Now it doesn't matter who you are, cabron. Nobody does this to us." Everyone in the restaurant froze. Sofia screamed silently. Maria stood in the kitchen doorway, praying. Some customers threw themselves to the floor. Diego, however, slowly turned around and looked at the weapon with a cold gaze. He didn't seem particularly nervous or excited, rather bored. "Can you use it?" he asked in a tone that confused even the armed Javier. "What?" "I'm asking if you can shoot with it, because if you can, then shoot right now. If not, then put it away before something bad happens." The sentence was like an icy wind sweeping through the restaurant. The weapon began to tremble in Javier's hand. Something in Diego's voice, something in his gaze told him this man had seen weapons before, many times, and survived everything. Ricardo also began to feel something wasn't right. "Javier, shoot him already!" But Javier couldn't. Something told him that if he shot first, he wouldn't be going home tonight. Diego took out his phone and dialed a number. The movement was so natural, as if he just wanted to ask the time. "Carlos, this is Diego," he said into the phone, while his eyes remained on Javier. "I'm at the Casa Esperanza restaurant. We have 3 friends here who don't know how to behave. Yes, Los Cuervos. Get here in 5 minutes. Bring the boys." He hung up and looked back at the armed Javier. "You have 5 minutes to disappear from here. After that, my men come for you." Luis's face suddenly went pale. Something in the man's voice, the name he mentioned. "Diego?" he asked, stammering. You're not Diego Ramírez by any chance?" Diego slowly nodded. The pistol fell from Javier's hand and clattered to the floor. Complete silence fell over the restaurant. Even breathing stopped. Diego Ramírez, the leader of the Los Hermanos cartel, the man whose name was only mentioned in whispers in Guadalajara. "Jesus Cristo," whispered Ricardo, instinctively stepping back. Luis, who had been harassing Sofia just a minute earlier, now looked like he had seen a ghost. "Señor Ramírez, we didn't know." "What didn't you know?" Diego asked quietly. That you were here. That the girl what?" Luis began to stammer. That she's important to you." Diego took a step closer. "And now you know?" "Yes, señor, yes." "Then go." The 3 men left the restaurant so quickly they knocked over tables and nearly tore the door off its hinges. Luis didn't even go back for his half-eaten meal. Diego slowly returned to his place and continued his dinner as if nothing had happened. But the restaurant had completely changed. Now everyone knew that the calm man was Diego Ramírez, Guadalajara's most feared cartel leader. Roberto Vega trembled so much he could barely hold his fork. Carmen Gutierrez and her friends whispered prayers at the corner table. Carlos Mendez paid immediately and left as if hell was chasing him. Sofia stood trembling at Diego's table. She didn't know what to do, what to say. "Señor," she began quietly. Diego looked up at her. "Yes?" "Thank you," she whispered. "No need. No one deserves such treatment." Sofia sat down across from him because her legs could no longer support her. You're that Diego Ramírez?" "Yes." "And why? Why did you protect me?" Diego thought about the answer for a moment. "Because you're the only person who treats me like I'm a normal person, and normal people protect those who are honest." Sofia tried to process what had happened. "But I'm just a waitress. Nobody. Why does this matter to you?" "Because," Diego replied quietly, "you're the way I would have liked to be before my life took a different direction." That evening, when the restaurant closed, Maria talked with Sofia in the kitchen. "Mija, do you know who that man was?" "Yes, Señora Maria." I think so. Maria looked around as if afraid someone was listening, though there were only two of them. That was Diego Ramírez, Sofia, the leader of the Los Hermanos cartel, the most feared man in Guadalajara. Sofia nodded. I suspected as much. But why? Why did he protect you? Diego Ramírez doesn't usually help strangers. Nobody. Sofia thought. I don't know, Señora. Maybe because I didn't ask him for anything. I wasn't overly afraid, but I didn't try to take advantage either. Mija, this changes everything. When Diego Ramírez puts his protection over someone, everyone will know. This is both a blessing and a curse. Sofia didn't understand what this meant, but she soon found out. In the following weeks, the area around Casa Esperanza changed. Diego's men, discreetly but visibly, regularly appeared in the neighborhood. They didn't bother anyone, but everyone knew they were there. The locals' behavior also changed toward Sofia. No one dared to speak rudely to her anymore. Roberto Vega suddenly became polite. Carmen Gutierrez and her friends pretended Sofia didn't exist. Carlos Mendez simply avoided the restaurant. In the following weeks, Diego became a regular at the restaurant. Every Tuesday and Friday he appeared, always exactly at 8 o'clock. He occupied the same table and was always served by Sofia. Every time Diego appeared, the restaurant's atmosphere changed radically. People spoke more quietly, were more polite, and no one dared to be loud. The previous crude, obscene conversations disappeared. Instead, tense silence reigned, broken only by the clinking of cutlery. Roberto Vega, who had previously shouted at Sofia, now called her Señorita Sofia and always thanked her for the service. Carmen Gutierrez simply left the restaurant. She found other places where she could gossip with her friends. I don't understand, Maria said to Sofia one evening. Why does Diego Ramírez come here regularly? This isn't his world. Sofia didn't understand completely either. Diego always ordered the same thing, quesadillas or enchiladas, a beer, and never stayed long. They didn't talk much, but a kind of quiet understanding developed between them. One evening in mid-September, Sofia finally asked, Señor Diego, why do you come here? There must be better restaurants in the city. Diego thought about the answer. Because here I am who I really want to be. Here I'm Diego, not El Jefe. Here I don't have to maintain the image. What image? That everyone should fear me. That every decision I make could be fatal for someone. Here I'm just a customer who trusts his waitress. Sofia nodded. And can I trust you? Yes, Diego replied firmly. As long as I live, no one will hurt you. Diego's protection, however, didn't bring only positive changes to Sofia's life. Los Cuervos cartel members disappeared from the area, but other problems arose. Several of the neighborhood's young people wanted to join Diego's men, hoping to get closer to the cartel boss through Sofia. The girl, however, rejected all such approaches. Sofia, Miguel Torres approached her one evening, an 18-year-old boy who had previously worked construction. You know you could talk to Diego Ramírez about me? I'd be good for his team. Miguel, it doesn't work that way, Sofia replied firmly. I'm not anyone's special connection. But I see he likes you. You just have to say a word. I won't do it. And don't ask me such things again. Miguel left disappointed, but others tried too. Sofia realized that Diego's protection also separated her from her community. People no longer looked at her the same way. To them, she was now Diego Ramírez's girl, which inspired fear and respect at the same time. The situation at the university also became complicated. Somehow, it leaked out that Sofia was connected to Diego Ramírez, and her classmates looked at her with strange glances. "Are you the one who knows Diego Ramírez?" asked Carmen Valdez, a rich family's daughter who had never noticed Sofia before. "It's not like that," Sofia replied carefully. "But I heard he protects you. Is this true?" Sofia didn't know what to answer. She didn't want to deny it because that would be disrespectful to Diego, but she didn't want to tell the truth either. "Señor Ramírez is a respectable man," she finally said. Carmen and her friends looked at each other in surprise. No one spoke of Diego Ramírez as respectable. With fear, yes. With hatred, yes. But with respect. Dr. Martinez, Sofia's favorite medical professor, pulled her aside after a lecture. "Sofia, I've heard certain rumors. They say you have connections to organized crime." Sofia's heart began beating rapidly. "Professor, I'm not accusing you of anything, mija. But I want you to know, if anything puts you in danger, talk to me. The university can help." Sofia was grateful for the goodwill, but knew the university could do nothing against Diego Ramírez if he decided otherwise. Fortunately, Diego never posed a threat to her. In late October, something happened that confirmed the importance of Diego's protection. Sofia was on her way home from university when 3 men stopped her on a dark street. She recognized them. They were second-tier members of the Los Cuervos cartel. Not the ones Diego had driven away from the restaurant, but new faces. "Are you Sofia Morales?" asked one of them, Eduardo Vega. "Yes," Sofia replied, trying to hide her fear. "You'd better know this. Diego Ramírez won't always be there to protect you, and we don't forget what he did to our men." "I don't know what you're talking about," Sofia lied. "Oh yes, you do. Luis Herrera and the boys told us what happened. But you know what's really interesting? Why does Diego Ramírez protect a nobody?" The second man, Carlos Ruiz, stepped closer. "Maybe because you're more than we thought. Maybe because you know his secrets." Sofia tried to leave, but they surrounded her. "Please let me go. I don't know anything about anything." "Oh, but you do," said Eduardo, "and we'd like to know what you know." At that moment, a black SUV turned into the street. Eduardo and his companions immediately recognized the vehicle. It belonged to Diego's men. 2 men got out. Carlos Santos, Diego's right hand, and Roberto Hernández, a cartel veteran. "Is there a problem?" asked Carlos calmly. Eduardo and his companions knew they couldn't win. There were too many of Diego's men, and they were too close to Los Hermanos territory. "No problem," Eduardo said quickly. "We were just talking." "Good. Because if there was a problem, then we'd have a problem too. And nobody wants that," Roberto replied. The 3 Los Cuervos members left quickly. Carlos Santos approached Sofia. "Are you all right, señorita?" "Yes, thank you. El Jefe said that if anything happens, contact him immediately. Here's his number." He handed over a slip of paper. "You can call any time." Sofia took the paper. On it was a phone number, nothing else. That evening, Sofia thought for a long time before calling the number. Finally, she decided she had to thank Diego's men for their help. "See?" she heard Diego's voice. "Señor Diego, this is Sofia." "Sofia, what happened?" Sofia told him about the morning's events. Diego listened patiently. "You did well to call," he said finally. "Carlos told me what happened. They won't bother you anymore." "Thank you, but I don't want you to have problems because of me." Diego laughed. This was the first time Sofia had heard him laugh. "Sofia, I'm the problem in this city. I'll never have trouble because of you. But why do you do this? Why is it so important to you to protect me?" There was a long silence on the phone. Then Diego slowly answered, "Because you remind me that there are good people in the world, and good people must be protected from the bad ones." By December 2013, Sofia's life had completely changed. At university, she achieved excellent results. She could concentrate on studying because she didn't have to worry about making a living. Diego regularly left extra tips for her, always amounts that were just enough for her monthly expenses. At the restaurant, no one dared to behave rudely toward her. Customers were polite. Neighborhood young people greeted her respectfully on the street. Sofia was Diego Ramírez's protégé, and that meant a lot in Guadalajara. On Christmas Eve, Diego visited the restaurant for the last time that year. "Señorita Sofia," he said formally, because other customers were present. "I'd like to speak with you." Sofia sat down with him. "Yes, señor?" "In January, I'll be traveling for a few weeks. Business matters. But my men will be here. If anything happens, call this number." He handed over another slip of paper. "This is Carlos's direct line." "I understand." Diego hesitated, then continued. "And there's something else. I heard you're achieving excellent results at university." Sofia blushed. "I try my best. I know, and I'm proud of you." This was the first time Diego had spoken so personally to her. Sofia felt herself tearing up. "Señor Diego, thank you. Everything. In the past months, you changed my life." "You changed mine too, Sofia. You taught me that there are things worth fighting for." Sofia nodded. "Take care of yourself, señor." "You too, mija." This was the first time Diego called her mija, a word people use for family members. In June 2014, Sofia received her first semester results. She got excellent grades in every subject. She was among the top 5% of medical students. Diego, who had returned from his trip in the meantime, proudly read the report Sofia showed him. "And what's your next goal?" he asked. "Surgery, operating on children. I want to help children from poor families." Diego smiled. "You know, Sofia, when I first saw you, I saw a decent waitress who worked honestly. Now I see a future doctor who can save people's lives. And you, señor, what's your goal?" Diego thought. That at least one person can say, "Diego Ramírez helped him become a better person. And that person is you." Sofia hugged Diego, not romantically, but the way one sibling hugs another. "Hermano," she whispered, "I'll always be grateful to you." "Hermana," Diego replied, "and I to you." That evening, Diego knew that whatever he had done before, this one thing, saving and supporting Sofia, was the best decision of his life. At the Casa Esperanza restaurant, Sofia continued to work, but now everyone knew. She wasn't just a waitress. She was Diego Ramírez's protégé, who would become a doctor, and who showed that genuine friendship could be found in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and share. Every week we bring similar moving stories that show that sincere respect and friendship can develop even between people from the most different worlds.